Welcome SQL family to the Redmond SQL user group speaker spotlight for January 2021 meeting. Today we are joined by Bob Pusateri. He will be presenting the ABCs of BDCs, Big Data Cluster, a new feature for SQL Server 2019 at our January 13 meeting. Check out the description below to find the RSVP link for our next meeting. Everyone is welcome. Don't forget to check out our website at redmondsql.org and sign up to become a member so you won't miss out on upcoming announcements. Follow our Twitter account at Redmond SQL and subscribe to our YouTube channel to get more free content. Here with Bob Pusateri. Did I say your last name correctly?
You did, actually.
Pusateri?
So,
Awesome. Great. Bob, thank you. Bob's going to be our next week speaker, January 2021 user group meeting for Redmond SQL user group here, and he will be talking about the ABCs of BDCs, which is the Big Data Cluster new feature of SQL Server 2019. How you doing, Bob?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing awesome. So let's get to know you a little bit. What you do right now?
So I'm a DBA for Salesforce.
Okay.
So I work in production DBA land on lots and lots of big SQL Server instances.
Nice. Very cool. Ask a bunch of DBAs this question. I've never met someone who answers like, "Oh yeah, I dreamed to be a DBA when I was a kid, when I was in school, or when I was in high school." You know, I've never met one. So I'm hoping you'll be the first one that tells me that.
Well, actually, that is kind of true. I wanted to be a DBA. I wanted to work with databases since I was in high school. So, yeah, I studied computer engineering and computer science. I did not get my first job out of college was not a DBA job, right? I wanted to be one, but I don't think anyone's really hiring DBAs right out of college with good reason. So I was a developer for a couple of years first, but then I started, getting some certifications and made it well known to the DBA team where I was working at the time that, hey, I want to work on the database team. And eventually an opening came up and I got the job, and I've been working with data in varying capabilities ever since.
That's great. Now you broke my streak. You're actually one person that I know, like I know a lot of people that wants to be in computer science, they want to be software engineer and stuff. So usually that's how they end up being a DBA, but that's great if you know. So just a little bit background on Bob. Bob is you're the youngest person ever to receive the SQL Server Microsoft Certified Master.
As far as I know, I am the youngest ever MCM for SQL Server. That's correct. So
for people that doesn't know, MCM is kind of one of those certification that only probably 15 people in the world that have it.
It's a little more than that, but there was very few at the point that I got it that weren't Microsoft employees, right? So most of them had gotten it internally at Microsoft or whatever, and then there weren't a whole lot at that point.
For us that never take it, can you just kind of share a little bit of the experience? And
it was so I did not have the full experience because at the beginning of when they started opening the program up to the public, it was like a month-long, effectively like boot camp style in Redmond that cost like thousands and thousands of dollars, and you had to take a month off work and go to Redmond and do all this stuff. So I was not part of that group. They changed the program a little bit and made it more accessible to people who could not get to Redmond for a month, which is when I did it. So there was you had to earn every certification in SQL Server at that point, and at that point you could sit for another like written test on SQL Server. And once you passed that qualifying test, you could take the MCM lab exam, which was I can't remember, it was either a 4 or a 6 hour lab where they gave you a environment of virtual machines and servers with different scenarios, and basically just gave you a laundry list of, here's like 20 things that need to be done in this environment. You can do them in any order. You probably won't finish them all. Just get to work and do as much as you can in the time allotted. So that's what that was like. Yeah.
Do you know the success rate of that test?
I have no idea. I can tell you that personally, I failed that lab test twice before I finally passed the third time. So I had to try a couple times, but I have no clue what the overall successes were.
Oh, so that was one of the hardest certification to get, and you're also very active in the community. You're the virtual chapter leader for PASS, right? The
I
HADR
I
chapter
I
leader.
help run the PASS HADR virtual chapter.
Mhm.
I used to run one of the chapters that was here in Chicago. I stepped down from that a couple of years ago, and I still help run the SQL Saturday, or the event formerly known as SQL Saturday, which in the future will be something else.
Right.
But that event that we have in Chicago, I've been helping run that for a bunch of years now.
Gotcha. Is there something that you wish you know when you start your career? You know.
Looking back on where I
Yeah.
am now, I really wish in the earlier days of my career I would have found the community. I was working for about 3 or 4 years before I ever found like my local user group, and found Pass and
Right.
the group of people. Because as soon as I started really networking and working with others
Mhm.
and making connections, that's when my career really started to take off. So I realized, I had only been working full time for, like I said, 3 or 4 years. That's still pretty early in my career, uh, way earlier than a lot of people can say. But I feel like, I wish I would have had that from the very, very beginning, because that's what's really been a tremendous asset for me.
That is, it's as much as PASS has affected, so many people's career, right, throughout their journey here in the data and the SQL Server community. Um, just because PASS no longer around, the community is still there. So
Yep.
yeah, we and people like Bob will, and others be able to, help future generation and more people that trying to get into this career and stuff. So, do you have any particular advice for somebody that want to pursue a career like in the data? Um,
In data, I'd
yeah,
say be as open-minded as possible right now. I mean, 15 years ago when I was getting started, relational databases were kind of all there were. Now there's, an entire universe of different data technologies and needs and wants. And,
yeah,
I feel like there's so many options now, and there's no way for any one person to pick one. But don't fall into the camp of I'm going to learn X and never understand anything else. I think that's not setting yourself up for flexibility in the future.
that's a great point. I mean, there are positions nowadays that's weren't there 5, 10 years ago, right?
Yep.
There's job opening out there that's like you usually it's all clumped under either a DBA or a developer, right? And
Hmm.
now there are a lot more position out there. Very cool. So let's get to your session. The ABC of the BDC. So you wanna just kind of give us a little preview what we can expect and
Sure. So yeah, big data clusters, as you mentioned, they are a new and much anticipated feature that appeared first in SQL Server 2019. This is very much an introductory level session for people who are familiar with SQL Server in general, and just curious about what is a BDC, what can it do for me, how do I use it. Big data clusters are an extremely complex beast, so there can and there are entire 1 hour or even half day sessions on how to set them up and how to utilize them, and the architecture behind them, because there's a lot of moving parts. It's not just like a SQL Server instance you install. There's a bunch going on there. But what this session is this session is going to briefly talk about how to set one up, briefly cover some very high level architecture, and the bulk of this session is just going to be demos. I have some scenarios I will work through, just showing you, okay, what can you do with a big data cluster? What makes it different than your average SQL Server instance? What kind of problems will a BDC help you solve, and how will it do it? So that's why I feel like the real power of an intro level session is, yeah, we can sit and we can talk about this stuff and the theory behind it, but that's not very exciting. And at the end of the day, that doesn't really show you what can it do. Whereas I feel like,
right, right.
you know, uh, a majority demo session will do that much more effectively.
Do you feel like comes to this session should have some basic understanding of Kubernetes or
I do not. I mean, if you have some, that's great. I'm going
Mhm.
to talk about Kubernetes for probably 30 seconds to 1 minute. We're not going to, again, Kubernetes is one of those aspects of a BDC that
Yeah,
you could spend a whole day
right.
discussing that and the intricacies of it. And
Gotcha.
there's people out there who absolutely do that. But I'm trying to break through the barriers of all the layers of setting up and exactly how this works, and focusing more on the what can it do for you.
Gotcha. So I do have a question from somebody that already RSVP to our user group meeting. He was
Okay.
wondering if he's done some cluster work in the past, but he would love to be able to kind of go to a lab and kind of play around with BDC. Do you know any resources like that? I know like VMware has their hands-on lab, like their website that you can go to. I don't know if anything like that. So I was
I
wondering.
say what I've used is I've just spun one up in Azure. Quite honestly,
Okay.
I do not have I have a lab in my house, but I have not set it up to run a BDC. I just spin it up in Azure Kubernetes service and run it there. I feel that's far easier for me to do, so that's what I tend to recommend to other people. There's no, I don't believe you can do that for free, unfortunately, but that's what I feel that's the good experience I've had, at least, is to spin one up in Azure.
Right. So Bob, how can people find you? Are you speaking somewhere else next, or any other event you'll be
So
participating?
after this event, I'm trying to think ahead on my calendar now. At the end of January, I believe it's the 27th, I am speaking at 8KB, which is the online SQL
Conference.
Server Internals Conference. So that's a during the day online conference. I'm doing a session there talking all about data compression in SQL Server and the internals behind it. So if you're interested in learning more of a SQL Server topic, please feel free to sign up for 8KB, and you could find me there. Otherwise, you can find me on Twitter. I'm SQL Bob, or at my blog, which is bobpusateri.com.
You have actually you have a blog post on what is a big data cluster.
I
It's
do.
yeah, it's pretty good write up, and yes, I'll put a link down below in the description. And thanks, Bob, for joining us, and we look forward to your presentation.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thank you so much for having me, and yeah, I'm really excited to give it. So can't wait to see you all next week.
Thanks, Bob.